Good afternoon, everyone. Today we are going to have our fourth session, and this is primarily related to the concepts of corporate governance, IT governance, and some of the frameworks that we use in both corporate and IT governance. Largely it is the COVID model, ITIL, and CMMI model, capability maturity model, which we will discuss. So here we are, corporate versus IT governance, and IT governance framework and theoretical foundations. Whereas in group discussion, we will take up a case study around governance of outsourcing in different cultures. So we touched upon the cultural aspect of business process outsourcing yesterday in our case study. But in today's discussion also, we will consider this with regard to outsourcing. And definitely governance, whether it is IT or corporate governance, will be part of the today's case. Okay, let us start with the concept of corporate governance. So when we talk about governance, it is basically the combination of three different words. Okay. The first is called system, the second is called direction, and the third one is called control. So when we try to perceive this in terms of corporate governance, we can say that it is a system of a company by which the company is directed and controlled. Yeah. So there are many different ways in which you can define corporate governance, but like here, it's a system of rules, practices, and processes by which a company is directed and controlled. When we talk about corporate governance, generally the only thing that comes in our mind is the compliance to the regulation of the organization. But yes, it is compliance to the regulation of organization or the company, but it is not necessarily restricted to the compliance of the regulation of the company. It is also largely related to the decision-making aspects for the company, right? So as the stakeholder of the company, whoever responsible, try and make as effective and efficient decisions as possible when it comes to corporate governance. Now the question is, who are involved in decision making? It starts with the stakeholders, and the first stakeholders would be the group of owners, and definitely those people are the shareholders or the actual owners of the company. And then at all different levels, decision makings are performed, and they are of different types, different nature. Like it can be also performed at certain level by the management of the company. So shareholders, who are the owners, or we also call them as board of directors, shareholders, the stakeholders, managers, CIO, CEO, top management of the organization, and also at the different decentralized level, it could be related to the different departments and so on. So decision making is very important, and when we talk about decision making, how the decision is made, the thing which comes first to our mind is information. So decision cannot be made without having adequate and very useful, relevant information. So basically it is information flow. So for making effective decision, the organization must have the information flow, constant information flow. And when it is information, when we talk about decision and two different aspects of decision and information flow, the organization or the company would be able to take effective decision if it has adequate, relevant information. Let's say if the information is very less, then probably because of lack of information, you as the owner of the company may not be able to take effective decision. It will be ill-informed decision. Whereas on the other hand, if we have abundance of information flow which is available to your organization, again you might get confused what effective decision to be taken out of plethora of information that you have. So again, there should be a balance of information flow in order for the top management, shareholders to take effective decisions in the organization. And that is one of the key things in corporate governance. Corporate governance involves balancing the interests of the company, many stakeholders. So in addition to shareholders, management, there are other stakeholders as well, such as customers, suppliers, financiers, government, and the community at the end. So important goal of corporate governance is to prevent conflicts of interest between the company's employees and its stakeholder. So we are saying decision making because the decision making is, the flow of decision making is top down. There should be a proper communication between the board of directors, the top management of the organization and rest of the organization where we have different departments and employees. And for that, we are saying that it is very important for any company to maintain that effective flow of communication, and that is possible only when the information is made based on only the filtered, relevant, balanced information which is available to it. And that is how you would also be able to prevent any conflict between the board of directors, management, and rest of the organization. Corporate governance framework consists of explicit and implicit contracts between the company and the stakeholders for distribution of responsibilities, rights, and rewards. Procedures for reconciling conflict interests of a stakeholder in accordance with their duties, privileges, and roles, and procedures for proper supervision, control, and information flows to serve a system of checks and balances. So this is what the framework, corporate governance framework is. So when we talk about corporate governance framework, it revolves around the company's vision, mission, strategies, and objectives. And the framework consists of all different stakeholders, primarily the management board, supervisory board, and committees. And they are responsible to take decisions regarding all different aspects of the companies. And they might lead to transparency and accountability being fixed to each and everyone in the company, can improve the values and ethics. It results in coming up with the various policies and regulatory framework, monitoring and internal control, risk and performance management. So all these are there. These can be considered as components or categories of the corporate governance framework, where the stakeholders, largely the board of directors and management, are responsible to take decisions at the organizational level and considering all these components, categories into their mind. Now, when we talk about IT governance, the scope of IT governance is not as big as corporate governance. Although we say both, the governance terminology is there with both of them, but when it comes to corporate governance, the key stakeholders are largely responsible for making decisions related to the health of the entire organization, whereas in IT governance, the scope is relatively restricted, right? So your decision making, your understanding and decision making about the functioning of the information technology and information technology service management, you are only concerned with considering and taking decisions related to the functioning of information technology, information system in the organization. It can be considered as a special type of corporate governance that provides a structure for organization to ensure that IT investments support business objectives. For every organization, you have the certain budget fund required for investing into information technology for the purpose of developing all different business processes and integrating them, working with the system, which is eventually support the core objectives of the organization. Its importance increases because IT services are becoming more dominant, because no matter whatever company you are, whether you are a car manufacturer or you are a cosmetic company or any other company, IT is a core part of your business, because without IT probably you may not be able to run your business properly. You may not be able to compete in the existing ecosystem, organizational ecosystem, because all your competitors will go far ahead of you if you're not able to not only just not talk about using it, but if you're not able to make effective use of information technology for automating your business processes, for running your various functionalities, you are going to lag behind. So IT services are becoming more dominant, and IT services and business management are increasingly integrated, and that's how we see the example of ERPs, where we see all the different information technologies working across different departments are integrated to make sure that the information flow goes in one direction and that reaches to top management for them to make the collective decision about the organization, and not working on bits and pieces of information coming from the various departments. So the decision support system, which will be based on the integrated system, will be much more stronger than working on the fragmented, non-integrated system. So it's very important for any organization. In order to set up a good IT governance structure, it must be well anchored in the organization's corporate governance setup. Yeah, so that's why we can say that corporate governance and IT governance should run hand by hand so that they can work together and they are able to effectively fetch the information on which, by applying the most advanced tools, the corporate level people like board of directors or the top management of the organizations is able to take effective decisions. Essentially, IT governance provides a structure for aligning IT strategy with business strategy. This is also very important because without each other's combination, it's very difficult for any organization to attain to accomplish its objective. So the entire business strategy, which is formulated by the top management, must go in tandem with the IT strategy of the organization, because it plays a very vital role in terms of accomplishing the organization's overall objective. Most of the literature on how to organize IT focused on choices between centralization, decentralization, and federal model. This is, as per the research, it's saying that there are different ways, different choices on how to organize information technology. These studies also indicate that a federalized IT governance structure, that is hybrid design of centralized infrastructure control and decentralized application control, is the dominant model in many contemporary enterprises. So when we, there are three possible, ways in which, or the choices in which the IT system in the organization can be organized. It should either be centralized, decentralized, or a federal model. The federal model is more frequently used in the contemporary organization, and this model is basically the mix of centralized and decentralized model, where the centralized model or the centralized aspect is used for the infrastructure control, whereas decentralized aspect or part is used for the application control, right? Yesterday when we were talking about business process outsourcing, all the different risks that we saw, they were broadly divided into two major categories. What were those two major categories? One was related to infrastructure, another was related to development. So when we talk about infrastructure development, it should be centralized. Why? Because all the vital decisions which are being taken regarding improvement of the organization, and for that matter, even the IT infrastructure, where there is highly likely that more investment is needed, the centralized model would be more effective, because the power or decision-making capability lies largely with the top management and board of directors. So this will go with the centralized control. Infrastructure control will go with the centralized part of the model, whereas application development, which is largely taken place at the departmental level, at the middle management, so this should largely be decentralized, so that all who are accountable for developing the applications, for making sure that application means IT application, IT enabled services are working properly, that should be decentralized. And combination of these two is considered as a federal model. Like the concept of federal government. India is an example of federal government, right? Where we have the centralized control and decentralization as well, not only at the center level but also at the state level. America is also another example of the federal government. So, but there is a difference between the federal government in the various countries. Like in India, the federal structure is there, but the power or the control doesn't lie too much into the state government, whereas in America, the state governments are equally very strong and powerful. So these are various different types of the federal model, but they can still be considered as federal model. And likewise, for organization also, we should go with the federal model or the mixed model, or we can consider this as a hybrid model. However, in the current hyper-competitive environment and with emergence of new electronic network organizations, do you think that federal model is going to work for the network organization, for which you don't know mostly about the infrastructure, about the resources that you have available at one place and all? So such model is not going to be implemented more effectively when we talk about the organizations such as electronic network organizations. The classical hierarchical design of IT governance become obsolete and inadequate for dealing with information processing and coordination demands posed, because it doesn't have a particular hierarchy structure, because they are all scattered and they work from wherever they are. So this kind of IT governance, hierarchical design, is not that useful as it could be for the organization which has all the different structure in place. They have board of governance. They have the set of hierarchy, and they follow all different levels being governed or directed or controlled by someone. And in the same way, they are also accountable for whatever they are expected to do. So the latest development in IT governance is the recognition of importance of accountability. So who is accountable for what? It's very important for proper functioning of the IT government. You might have heard of the financial scandals that have taken place in 2007 and 8 because of loss of many companies in America, and for that matter, many other parts of the world. They simply crashed because of the financial scandals, and that have caused authority to issue stricter laws and regulation. And one of those laws is Sarbanes-Oxley Act, SOX, which has very clearly outlined the guidelines for which which organizations are bound to follow. The recent examples of do you know any recent examples of total financial collapses of any company in the current time, like last 7, 8, 9 years? Kingfisher in India. Why that collapse happened? Because of one or the other way financial scandals, right? Or in America, Lehman Brothers, or many other companies are there. There is one Italian, Refcom, American company again. One Italian company which, because of the financial scandal that was taking place from last 15 years, they generated behind the curtain about 3 times more revenue than the overall worth of the company. So there are loads of such examples, and for that there was a need of stricter laws to be imposed to the companies in order for saving the stakeholders' rights. So this is one of the laws, SOX Act. This has implications for the willingness of consider outsourcing as an option, rightly or wrongly. The governance of IT outsourcing relationship has to result in realizing the mutually set goals of the relationship. IT outsourcing partnerships involved an allocation of responsibilities to either the service provider or service recipient. The split of course also influences IT governance, even though this always remains the recipient's responsibilities. Service recipients should ensure that their outsourcing contracts contribute to the realization of their IT governance objectives as well. So the expectations of organizations are not only limited just to get the services being performed related to business processes or functionality or a part of organization's work that is being outsourced. At the same time, organization also wants that all the outcome that they are receiving from the service providers also comply to their IT governance regulations. So in that way, IT governance is very important and relevant for organizations. Meeting the recipient's IT governance objective is one more of the requirements that service provider must meet and that service recipients must therefore monitor. Until now, whatever we talked about, offshore outsourcing, business process outsourcing, we didn't talk much about how the providers are also liable. They are accountable for not only working for executing the specific business process or set of business processes for the recipients, they have also the responsibility to making sure that whatever outcome they are generating, they are going to be as per the IT governance regulations of the company or the sector in which the company is operating. The monitoring is the task of recipient information management, and we have seen how the recipients more often monitor the work of service providers. If the recipient's IT services are insourced rather than outsourced, this responsibility remains with the recipient. Because of the link between corporate and IT governance, service recipients outsourcing their services to partners must give their providers insight into their corporate governance structure. So how would the service provider will make sense of the structure, the corporate governance structure or IT governance structure which is currently working in your organization? Because unless you have the sense of, you may not be able to design or execute the plans of running the business processes as what is expected by the recipients. And at times this could be risky, because you don't, as a company, you don't want to let the structure and what is going on in your company, within your company, in terms of the corporate governance, how the decision making is being done, who are responsible for taking decision making and all. So in reality, not many companies like sharing such information with outsiders, for example, service providers. So the increasingly strong link between corporate and IT governance effectively renders IT outsourcing partnership less attractive. Yeah. So because these service providers are responsible for making or providing the solution which should comply not only with the IT governance guidelines and regulations for the organization, but also based on the link of corporate and IT governance, which generally the organizations don't want to reveal, and that's why it is a less attractive phenomenon at times for certain organizations. IT governance framework defines the ways and methods through which an organization can implement, manage, and monitor IT governance within its premises. So when we talk about IT governance within the organization, three different components of this are off by any organization, and they are in terms of implementing, managing, and monitoring the IT governance. It provides guidelines and measures to effectively utilize IT resources and processes within the organization. So this is, in effect, these are the few key points that you need to take care of as a part of effectively implement the IT governance in your organization. So you provide guidelines and measures to effectively utilize the resources. It primarily helps organization to provide a roadmap and evaluate the performance and effectiveness of IT governance processes. So, what are the different IT governance processes? You need to provide the roadmap and evaluate the performance and effectiveness of those processes. It provides insight into the performance of IT department and achieve legal and regulatory compliance with respect to IT. So, these are the key aspects that you take care of within the premises of the organization when it comes to effectively manage the IT governance, or to see that whatever business processes that you have outsourced, should comply with the IT governance guidelines in your organization. To set up an IT governance structure, there are several frameworks which are available, right? And largely in the contemporary organizations, the framework like COBIT and ITIL they are very popular. Like, if you have to show, no matter whether you are a recipient or the service provider, whatever type of organization, if you have this certification available from COBIT, ITL, and also, although CMMI is very specific kind of model, and I will also show you the differences between these frameworks, but capability maturity model, integrated model, CMMI, is also used at times for the organization to show the maturity in their processes and how capable they are in terms of the different ranking of their capability maturity model at different stages, anyone can understand whether the organization is capable enough in terms of mature enough in terms of providing the service or not. Now, the first framework for the IT governance in the organization is COBIT, and it stands for Control Objectives for Information and Related Technologies. Yeah, it's a good practice IT control framework, first issued in 1996 by International Professional Association called ISACA for IT management and IT governance. COBIT 5, which is the very latest form of COBIT framework, is a leading framework for the governance and management of enterprise IT. Simply stated, COBIT 5 helps enterprises create optimal value from IT by maintaining a balance between realizing benefits and optimizing risk levels and resource use. Yeah. So this one, COBIT, is basically used right from 1996 at the different labels, but the current form of COBIT is COBIT 5. I'll show you how they have developed or evolved right from the beginning from COBIT 1. But at the moment, COBIT 5 brings together 5 different principles and 7 enablers, or we can say that drivers, which build an effective governance and management framework. And they are based on 7 enablers or drivers, which optimizes information and technology investment. So these are the 5 different principles of COBIT, and they start with meeting stakeholders' needs, covering the enterprise end-to-end, applying a single integrated framework, enabling a holistic approach, separating governance from management. So these are the key principles on which COBIT works. Now when we talk about, this is COBIT, and there we are trying to understand the framework and its different principles and drivers, but when it comes to any IT governance framework, what generally we want that framework to do for a company? What do you think? What can you expect from a framework in a company? Means how can the framework support the company in terms of enhancing its business effectiveness overall, by considering the aspects of IT governance. Before coming to any even IT governance framework or any other framework, when we talk about a framework or a model or a theory, what do you understand by it? Why do we use a model or a framework or a theory, to examine, to understand the organizational, working performance, or to measure the efficiency at which the organization is working on things like that? Have you heard of any other framework? Just leave these frameworks, IT governance framework. Have you heard of any other frameworks that you'd have used, not necessarily in context of organization, or a model or a theory used in any other context? Have you ever developed a theory or a framework or a model? or extended the existing theory, model, or framework for any organization or for individuals to understand, examine, to evaluate something?
So a framework helps to examine or judge any company or any organization based on the data given by the particular person who has developed it.
Yes. That's absolutely correct. So you're saying that framework, and from here, that's why when I saw you blank, when I talked about framework is a kind of generic model which derives from the well-established theory. It could, or maybe based on the new concepts as well altogether. But if it is, let's say, implemented for any organization or any company, it will try, based on collected data from the organization's employees or other stakeholders, if you are able to perform some sort of evaluation or measurement or examining the effectiveness of the organization based on the data collected for the various components of the framework, you then try and analyze how the company is able to perform, or how the company is able to adopt certain new, let's say, platform, new technology. We have talked here in the last few days about the enhancement or upgradation of technology in the organization, and that is a need of the hour. You need to upgrade, you need to enhance yourself. Otherwise, you may not be able to satisfy the customer needs. When you are, trying to improve yourself, when you are at, let's say, the small band, which we saw yesterday, narrow band, you are improving yourself, going and enhancing your platform to the next level, where we call it as broadband, right? Or fiber optics, whatever it is. When you are going to adopt the new technology, new cutting edge technology, you should be in a position not only to implement but also to adopt it. But how would you measure whether you have effectively adopted, or there are certain section of stakeholders who are still resisting and not actually accepting the adoption of the advancement of technology that you are going to implement or you're planning to implement in your system? So for that, how would you do that? So the way to do is by either developing a framework or developing a model or extending the theory. That's how it is. And in the same way, although we are talking it only in context of IT governance, but because IT governance or corporate governance is one of the key aspects for organization running smoothly and effectively, and that's why it is very important to understand whether the new IT implementations or IT-enabled services implementation in the organization is being, considerably being adopted, accepted or not. And for that, you need to see it through the framework, through the model, or by applying the theory, right? I don't know whether you know about, just to take you through very simple other models and theories that could also be used to understand whether whatever new platform and new technology you want to take your organization, whether you are in a position to adopt or your customers are able to adopt it or not. So in terms of adoption, if we think about the theory, the first theory which came way back in 1975 was theory, let's say it was theory of reasoned action. Yeah? And later on, those theories and framework also got enhanced and implemented in the various different scenarios. So it started with theory of reasoned action, let's say, which was actually implemented to understand the adoption of the technology in not only for the individuals or individual stakeholders, but also for the organization way back in 1975, okay, where that it was not so frequent evolution of technology, and later on it enhanced, and the theory was strengthened further to technology acceptance model, which came in 1989, and then the theory of planned behavior. And in that way, the theory got strengthened, it got expanded, and also it took the shape of a framework later on by which the organization started understanding the all different aspects of technology adoption. And by combining such theories, like I told you about 3-4 theories: theory of reasoned action, technology acceptance model, theory of planned behavior, and then came extended TAM, which was called as TAM2, and then UTOUT, unified theory of acceptance and use of technology. At the same time, many other various theories and frameworks were parallelly developed for the organization's perspective and the ecosystem in which the organization worked. So later on, in order to understand how the organization adapts to the new changes which are constantly being taken place, a framework came which actually combined the theoretical model, like any theoretical model, whether it is TAM or TPB or UTOUT or diffusion of innovation model, anything, with the organizational aspects and environmental aspects. So the framework, which was designed and developed over the period of time by considering the various aspects, was called as Technology, Organization, and Environmental Framework, TOE. If you go and search in Google, you will find how organization try and implement this framework to understand how it is performing, how it is adapting itself to the newer changes being taken place, not only on the technological front, but also at the organizational front and at the environmental level. So TOE framework was one of them. In the same way, we are trying to understand the efficiency and effectiveness of organization by implementing these different frameworks. ITES for IT-enabled services, and these frameworks are like COBIT is there, CMM integrated is there, and ITIL is there, and in addition there are other quality assurance guidelines and frameworks were also given by various organizations at different point in time. So this was, that's why I said, I just forgot to mention, and when I saw your blank faces, I couldn't. So now, are you able to understand why framework is needed for the organization? Why do we implement? And because some of you are either doing your PhD or would do PhD in the future. Sometimes you will see that whatever well-established theory, model, frameworks are there, which are used for understanding the organization's effectiveness, efficiency, performance, adaptation to the new technology, if you are able to develop a new framework, new model, new theory based on whatever is already established, you get your PhD award, because you have done research to understand how a particular specific organization's adaptation to technology, adaptation and effectiveness, performance can be measured by the theory or the framework that you have developed, and it is not existing at all in the world at this point in time. So in the same way, for IT governance, what we try to understand here is how through these framework, which are either corporate governance related or IT governance related, are able to measure the efficiency, the effectiveness of functioning of the organization. And that's why, as a layman, I don't know. I'm a service client, I'm a service provider, I don't know whether I should go. If I'm a startup, I want to get certain services related to outsourcing, how would I get to know that you are a company I should contact to in order to get the service? I don't know. I don't know the technicality, the nitty-gritty of the outcome that I'm going to get out of you. So for any layman, these are the different landmarks which are obtained, accomplished by the company, and when they get certification through these bodies, ITIL, COBIT, CMMI, ISO, all these, then I would to a certain extent trust you and then try and get your service from you. So these 3-4 frameworks that we are trying to see and discuss today are the part of it. Although we are also not going to go in too much detail of these frameworks, because you won't understand anyway about the too much complexity and technicality about these frameworks, but at least we should know that what these frameworks are and where do we use, why these different frameworks exist at the same point in time. If you have the service providers having one certification for the particular framework and the other one with the other framework, who you should go to choose and how they are going to support and help you and guide you for the outsourcing process that you want to outsource and accomplish your business objectives and so on, right? So we are not going in that detail, but we just try to understand what is the basic idea behind these frameworks, how do they work, and how we will also see, comparing one framework to the other, how one should understand about the different frameworks. And they are definitely not, to a certain extent they might be overlapping in nature with one to the other, but they are not serving the exactly same purpose. They are for the different purposes. So these all different aspects we try to understand through these frameworks. Now, is it somehow clear? Okay, so this is in that way, this is the first framework that we were discussing, and this is saying that this is a framework for IT governance. So when we talk about implementation of a framework for any organization, we talk it mainly in two contexts. One, to see that whether the framework is working for the entire enterprise level, or it works to serve the purpose of enterprise IT and IT governance of the organization. So this COBIT, as you can see, that it's a control objective for information and related technology. It is more sort of IT related framework because it is controlling the objectives for the IT enabled services. And then when you go through these points, you would be able to make more sense of why these frameworks are used in these contexts. So again, just to reiterate, I would say, I will just go through it once again. COBIT is a good practice IT control framework. So it is used for IT control. First issued in 1996, and it started with its first version as COBIT 1. I will show you how over the years it advanced, and now we are at the stage where we have COBIT 5. So if you are getting a service provider who is saying to you that I am COBIT 1 certified, probably you are not going to go to that service provider because it was able to satisfy only the certain constraints, means in terms of acceptability. But if you get to know that the service provider is COBIT 4 or COBIT 5 certified, you will say, oh, that's the service provider I am looking for, because it would be able to satisfy all my needs and requirements. So COBIT 5, that's why, is a leading framework and the latest framework in this regard, and for the governance and management of enterprise IT. COBIT 5 helps enterprises create optimal value from IT by maintaining a balance between realistic benefits and optimizing risk levels and resource use. So here the intent of using and implementing framework like this is to make sure that you are able to accomplish the objective by minimizing the risk level in the company and also by optimizing the resources. Right? If you are able to do that, and if the framework is able to guide you to get your expected outcome with the minimal possible resources, with the minimal risk, and get the expected outcome, whatever you want to get, and that's what you want to achieve. And this framework is able to guide you through it. when we talked about COVID-5, we said that there are 5 principles of COVID-5 and there are 7 different enablers or drivers which actually drive the implementation of COVID-5. And these are the 5 different principles on which COVID-5 works, which starts with meeting stakeholder needs, covering the enterprise end-to-end, applying a single integrated framework. It doesn't believe in the fragmented multiple framework. It actually integrated. So in this way, if you try and understand its similarity with CMMI, it is somehow similar in it, because CMMI, or capability maturity model, and I stands for integration. So it is no more fragmented. When we'll go to CMMI, we will get to know more about it. But likewise, it also works on integrated framework, enabling a holistic approach, and that's the place where we will get to know about the 7 different enablers. What are the enablers or the drivers for the COVID-5 framework? And separating governance from management. So this framework also clearly identifies the governance aspects and management aspects, and it splits into 2 different parts. And if we see the principles of COVID-5 one by one, you'll get to know about how it works on these 5 principles. First one is meeting a stakeholder needs. Enterprises exist to create value for their stakeholders. That's what you want, right? One of your objectives, is also to add value, to create value. Unless you create value, the customer is not going to stick to you. They will go to the other similar brands. So what are you going to do for creating value? Okay, your ultimate aim is to make profits, right? But you can keep on making profits only when you keep adding value to your products and services for which you are there in the market. Otherwise, your competitors are going to take over, and they will be able to attract the customer segment which was initially there for company ABC. So essentially, what you have to think as an organization, as a company, as a corporate company, that you are going to make profit. But that is very closely linked with what value you are adding to your product and service, which is not there with the competitor. And then only you would be able to attract your customer. So enterprises exist to create value for their stakeholders, and their stakeholder needs drive the value creation, and the objective is to create value. How you are going to create value? Through benefits realization, risk optimization, and resource optimization, right? So the value can be created for this IT-enabled services that you are responsible to deliver to your customers, to your other stakeholders, only with the value creation, and that comes through benefits realization. Benefit is always realized for the company, but sometimes they forget to create value, to add innovation to their products and services, but that is absolutely essential. And in that way, particularly when we talk about IT services, for value creation, it is very important to understand that unless you bring the risk involved in providing the services to the customers to the minimal possible level, customer probably won't be very satisfied with your services. So risk has to be minimal. Means the security and privacy should be absolutely packed in terms of providing services. If you are able to ensure your customer that you can provide sufficient privacy and security through your application, they would come to you. And in that way, if you are able to effectively optimize the resources, not only in terms of human resources, but also the effective use of hardware and software to minimize again the cost, so that you can actually increase the profit margin, that will be something which is needed. And COVID-5's first principle is to meet the stakeholder needs, and in doing that you have to take care of all these. And basically through this framework you will be able to understand whether you have effectively implemented the stakeholders' need or not. Covering the enterprises end to end. If you try and see in this particular principle, the creativity, the value creation, the first principle is going to be the part of the second principle, which is very closely linked with the governance enablers and governance scope, and they are again linked to roles, activities, and relationships of the various other stakeholders. And this is again been expanded. Roles, activities, and relationships are expanded here, where you can see that how the different processes and activities are linked to the different levels. It starts with the owners and the stakeholders, like the board of directors, who are the key shareholders. And if you see the link, backward and forward link, you will get to know how the flow of control moves from one point to the other, and again the sense of responsibility or accountability move from backward to forward direction. So if it starts with owners and stakeholders, they delegate their authority to governing body, which set direction to the management, and management, the top management, instruct and align the various responsibilities for operations and executions to the various different departments. And then backward, the department who are responsible for executing and operating on the various processes, they report back to management. Management again monitoring processes taken place from management to governing body, and governing body is accountable for reporting to the performance to the shareholders and owners of the company. So in that way, this entire cycle, in tandem with the value creation aspect of the company, which is interfaced with governance enablers and governance scope, are linked to each other to provide the expected level of efficiency and effectiveness when it comes to IT-enabled services, governance of IT-enabled services. So once you have undertaken principle 2, the third one is related to applying a single integrated framework. There is a lot of confusion and conflict when organizations are working on the different framework at enterprises and IT enabled services label. But COVID-5 aligns with the latest relevant other standards and frameworks used by the enterprises. These are individual fragmented frameworks again, which were used before at the enterprise level: COSO, ERM, ISO, IEC 9000, ISO 31000. Some of them are quality assurance framework, which assures the quality of the enterprise, and in that form, ISO 9000 is very popular framework. Although there are other frameworks, when you go and try and go through all of them, you will get to know what each and every framework are responsible for. But initially, when such quality assurance framework came, about 15-20 years in India, all the organizations started taking ISO certification, right? And they started advertising that we are ISO company, 9000, 9001. There are different various versions of ISO, responsible for providing quality assurance in different areas. So likewise, IT-related frameworks were ISO 38500, ITIL, which we will see, ISO 27000 series, TOGAF, PMBOK, Prince2, and CMMI, right? And some of them are still there, but and they are pretty much used nowadays to understand the organizational effectiveness in terms of delivering IT-enabled services. For example, ITIL, CMMI, and to a certain extent, Prince2 is also there to measure the organization's performance in terms of their provisioning, efficiency, effectiveness to provide IT-enabled services. This allows the enterprises to use COBIT 5 as the overarching governance management framework integrator. So these individuals frameworks, some of them have been integrated together. So if you get to know that this is COBIT 5 company or COBIT 5 certified company, you will automatically get to know this company has all these segmented, fragmented frameworks incorporated into it. But they are not all integrated together in COBIT 5 because we are going to take it independently, particularly in the IT-related framework like ITIL and CMMI. Their purposes are a little different. They are not overlapping. They are not conflicting to each other. Their purposes are a little different. Principle 4 is about enabling a holistic approach. Here is the place in the fourth principle we talk about 7 different enablers or drivers for IT-enabled services through COBIT 5. And these are the 7 drivers. So it starts with principles, policies, and frameworks, and it is linked to all other drivers like processes, organizational structures, culture, ethics and behavior, information, services, infrastructure, and applications, and people, skill, and competencies. So the bottom 3, these 3 enablers or drivers are considered as the drivers related to its resource because they enable the company in terms of the information flow, in terms of infrastructure, and also as a part of human resource to feed in, and from there the company is able to operate by applying the human resource and infrastructure and the information flow to come up with the different processes and outcomes. So, they are discussed in bit details here, and we will see one by one all these 7 drivers. But before that, do you want to take a 5-minute break? Okay. So just let us take 5 minutes break, and then come back and finish the remaining part of our discussion.